Adrian slammed a divorce agreement in front of me, stating, "The company has gone bankrupt. I do not wish to implicate you. Let us divorce." After 3 years of marriage, all that remained was a casual remark of not wishing to implicate. The following day, I observed him and his idealized former love arriving at the hospital for a premarital medical examination. It was not until the physician, holding the report, addressed him with a grave expression, "Mr. Adrian, you." Under the stark white lights of the hospital, Lydia's meticulously made-up face contorted momentarily. She did not even spare another glance at the faltering man beside her. The sound of her high heels striking the floor was rapid and disordered, resembling a beautiful rat fleeing in haste. Adrian remained rigid in place, the color draining completely from his face. He extended his hand, as if attempting to grasp something, but ultimately it fell limply. His entire body, as though deprived of its skeletal structure, slumped against the wall. I stood at the corner of the corridor, silently observing this absurd farce. My heart registered no fluctuations, and I lacked even the energy for sarcasm. The air was permeated with the cold, pungent odor of disinfectant, which unexpectedly induced an unprecedented clarity in me. The immense burden that had weighed on my chest for 3 full years finally shattered into dust at that moment. I did not approach him. His life henceforth bore no relation to mine. I turned around and walked out of the building filled with partings of life and death with steady steps. Returning to the villa referred to as home, I skillfully entered the password. The door opened, and everything inside remained as it was when I left, tidy, cold, devoid of any warmth of life. Like a guest, I proceeded directly to the 2nd floor and opened the wardrobe. My belongings were few, consisting of merely a handful of clothes, insufficient to fill a suitcase. I had once believed this to be my haven, where I prepared meals and subdued all my sharpness for him. In retrospect, it was merely an illusion constructed by my unilateral sentiment. The nanny, Helen, came up with a fruit platter and, upon seeing me packing, curled her lip. "Madam, oh no, Miss Evelyn, are you leaving?" Her tone carried undisguised contempt and schadenfreude. "As soon as our master encounters trouble, you flee. This marital bond is rather tenuous. The privileges of a wealthy family are not bestowed upon just anyone." I paused my actions, lifted my head, and calmly fixed my gaze upon her. "Helen, would you like this privilege for yourself?" She was rendered speechless by my question, her face flushing red. I had no inclination to waste further words on her and zipped up the suitcase. This so-called home was nothing more than an ornate cage, with every corner inscribed with my humility. Adrian's suits always required ironing to perfection without creases. His stomach was delicate, necessitating meals that were always warm and light. He preferred silence, so I dared not make any superfluous noise at home. I had become his ideal accessory, yet failed to live as myself. The phone rang shrilly, with mother-in-law flashing on the screen. I slid to answer, but before I could speak, Adrian's mother's sharp and acerbic voice pierced my eardrum. "Evelyn, you ungrateful wretch. You forgetful ingrate. As soon as my son's company goes bankrupt, you eagerly divorce and flee. Has your conscience been devoured by a dog? Our Lou family was truly blind to allow a woman like you to enter our door." The curses from the other end grew increasingly vile, as if intending to nail me to a pillar of shame. I remained silent, listening quietly. I listened to how she defined my betrayal, and how she devalued my 3 years of contributions to nothingness. Evidently, in their eyes, I was merely a gold digger scheming for their family fortune. When she finally tired of cursing and paused, gasping for breath, I softly spoke. "Are you finished?" The other end fell silent momentarily. "If so, I will hang up." Without waiting for her response, I abruptly ended the call. Then, I opened my contacts and located all the Lou family's entries. Adrian. Delete, block. Mother-in-law. Delete, block. His arrogant sister. Delete, block. Each tap of my finger felt like severing a chain that bound me. Upon completing this, I felt the entire world become serene. I dragged the half-filled suitcase down the stairs step by step. Helen still stood in the living room, glaring at me with an expression anticipating a spectacle. I ignored her and proceeded straight to the front door. Pushing open the heavy carved wooden door, the afternoon sunlight suddenly poured in, warm to the point of unreality. I squinted my eyes and deeply inhaled the air of freedom. Farewell, Lou family. Farewell, my love that died before yesterday. Using the last sum of private savings accumulated from my work, I rented a small single room in the city's old district. The room was not large, but it faced south with large windows. I unpacked the items from the suitcase one by one and arranged them neatly. Without the $1 million mattress or the smart temperature-controlled bathroom, I nonetheless slept exceptionally soundly. That night, I had a very long dream. In the dream, it was the 3 years of my marriage to Adrian. I dreamed that to celebrate his birthday, I learned to make his favorite Wellington steak, blistering my hands, yet he made me wait until late night due to a call from Lydia. I dreamed that his mother, in front of all relatives, accused me of being unable to bear children, calling me a hen that does not lay eggs, while he silently played with his phone beside her. I dreamed that I waited for him in heavy rain for 3 hours, and he drove back with a drenched Lydia, forgetting that I was also waiting for him. Scene after scene, all depicted my humility and his indifference. At the end of the dream, I stood in a thick fog, unable to find a way out. It was not until a beam of light shone in that I realized the so-called fog was merely a prison of my own making. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtain gaps onto my face. I opened my eyes without a hangover-like headache or post-dream palpitations. There was only an unprecedented sense of ease and clarity. The past Evelyn, who endured humiliations for love, had died in that long dream of yesterday. From today onward, I would live for myself. I dragged out a long sealed box from under the bed. Opening it revealed my university era, a complete set of professional jewelry design tools, pigments, brushes, and a thick portfolio. My fingertips brushed over those design drafts drawn countless times, evoking a feeling both familiar and alien. Jewelry design, this was Evelyn's specialty, the talent I once took pride in. For Adrian's words, "I dislike strong women, stay at home and I will support you," I personally buried this passion for 3 full years. Now, it was time to bring it back to light. I took out the brushes and paper, and the lines and colors from memory flowed slowly under the pen. My hand was somewhat rusty, but inspiration had never dried up. I drew for the entire morning, stopping only when my stomach growled with hunger. Looking at the emerging design on the paper, I smiled for the first time since the divorce. In the afternoon, I dialed a number not contacted for a long time. "Professor William, hello, this is Evelyn." The other end was silent for a few seconds, then a voice filled with surprise and regret responded, "Evelyn? Is it really you? Where have you been these years?" Professor William was my university mentor and the one who appreciated me most as a talent scout. He had once asserted that I would be a rising star in the design world. I briefly recounted my experiences over these years, omitting the unsavory details, merely stating that I had married and now divorced. Professor William sighed on the other end. "It's good that you're back, good that you're back. Your talent should not be buried in domestic trivialities." He did not inquire further, merely encouraging me in the warmest manner. Coincidentally, there's the Star Cup National Emerging Designer Competition recently, with high prestige, an excellent opportunity for newcomers. Would you like to try? Yes. I responded almost immediately. After hanging up, my heart was filled with long-absent fighting spirit. I would participate in the competition and reclaim what was mine. In the following days, I immersed myself fully in preparation. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Adrian was experiencing the darkest moment of his life. The further examination report emerged, each word like a heavy hammer shattering his final hopes. Malignant brain tumor. Advanced stage. The surgery success rate was less than 30%, and even if successful, the best outcome was merely prolonging life for 1 or 2 years. He sat paralyzed on the cold hospital bed, experiencing the fear and despair of life being priced explicitly. He frantically called me, only to hear, "The user you dialed is powered off." Switching to Facebook, he madly sent messages. Evelyn, I was wrong, please come back? Evelyn, I'm ill, very seriously ill, can you come see me? Evelyn, respond to me. However, each message was followed by a red exclamation mark. He had been blocked. This discovery caused his heart to tighten suddenly, a panic of lost control instantly enveloping his entire body. Previously, no matter what he did, Evelyn would always wait in place. He believed she was the kite clutched in his hand, the string always in his palm no matter how far it flew. But now, that string had snapped. For the first time, he truly felt that Evelyn no longer wanted him. This realization terrified him more than death. Find her. Find her for me. He roared at his assistant in the ward, even if you have to turn the entire city upside down, bring her to me. To seek more design inspiration, I visited nearly all museums and art exhibitions in the city. That afternoon, I researched materials in the design section of the municipal library. A rare album on Baroque period jewelry styles caught my attention. I reached out, and simultaneously another slender hand landed on the same book. I paused momentarily and looked up. The man before me wore a simple white shirt, exuding a clean and gentle demeanor, with gold-rimmed glasses that made him appear scholarly and elegant. Sorry. He spoke first, his voice clear and pleasant, you go ahead. I shook my head, it's fine, we can look together. Thus, we stood by the bookshelf, silently flipping through the same book. Occasionally, he offered unique insights on certain design details, always resonating with me. Your ideas are quite unique. He closed the book, his eyes behind the lenses smiling with appreciation. Are you a designer? I nodded, I am striving to become one. I'm Julian. He extended his hand proactively, I'm also a design enthusiast. May I have your contact information? I hope we can exchange more in the future. His gaze was sincere, without any offense. I hesitated briefly but still provided my phone number. This might be my first step out of the past and into a new life. Bidding farewell to Julian, I returned to my rental and committed my recent conceptions to paper. Ultimately, a design draft titled Rebirth emerged on the page. It was a brooch, featuring a phoenix rising from ashes with wings poised for flight, its tail feathers inlaid with fine diamonds that refracted rainbow light under illumination, symbolizing breaking free from shackles and rebirth through fire. This was my story and my manifesto. I carefully sealed it and mailed it to the Star Cup organizing committee. Simultaneously, Adrian's assistant finally located the neighborhood where I rented. Upon receiving the address labeled Old Neighborhood in South City, he furrowed his brows tightly. He could not imagine that Evelyn, who had lived in his villa for 3 years without touching a drop of water in labor, would reside in such a place. Disregarding the doctor's objections, he removed the 4-tube from his hand and drove over late at night. His Bentley parked below the dilapidated building, starkly incongruous with the surroundings. He looked up and, among the densely packed windows, immediately spotted the one still illuminated. The light was a warm orange-yellow, gently enveloping the small space. He could imagine me under that light, perhaps reading or drawing, in tranquil times unrelated to him. Jealousy and regret, like two venomous snakes, madly gnawed at his heart. He wanted to rush up, smash open the door, and reconfine that woman by his side. But he dared not. He feared seeing deeper disgust and indifference in my eyes. Thus, he sat desolately in the car for the entire night until dawn broke. The next morning, I shouldered my drawing board and headed out to sketch in the suburbs. As soon as I exited the unit building, I saw that familiar and glaring car. The car window lowered, revealing Adrian's haggard face covered in stubble. His eyes, filled with red bloodshots, stared fixedly at me. My steps did not halt, I walked past his car without glancing sideways. The sunlight cast a long shadow behind me, resolute and crisp. As if he and his expensive car were merely insignificant roadside scenery. Evelyn. Adrian's hoarse voice came from behind. He abruptly pushed open the car door, stumbling forward to block me. His arm gripped my arm with alarming force, like a drowning person clutching the last piece of driftwood. Please, forgive me. His voice carried an unprecedented humility and plea. I looked at him indifferently, attempting to withdraw my arm, but he gripped it tighter. Adrian, we are already divorced. I know. I know I was a bastard. He was emotionally agitated, his eyes reddening. The bankruptcy was fake, a lie I fabricated to deceive you. I just wanted to be with Lydia. He finally admitted it. This truth, which I had long suspected yet still found profoundly ironic. I tugged at the corner of my mouth, revealing a cold smile. So what? Did you come specifically to tell me how disgusting you were back then, how despicable your methods? My words were like a knife, precisely stabbing his most painful spot. His face paled, and the hand gripping mine trembled. No, that's not it. He eagerly tried to explain, ultimately resorting to his final card. I'm ill, Evelyn, I have a terminal disease, I won't live much longer. He stared intensely into my eyes, seemingly seeking pity and compassion. But he was disappointed. I merely found it laughable, genuinely so. Oh? Is that so? I tilted my head, my tone light. That is truly your retribution. What does it have to do with me? Mr. Adrian, please clarify, I am not your recycling station, nor your cleanup crew. Your birth, aging, illness, death, your loves and hates, from the moment you slammed that divorce agreement in front of me, they have had absolutely no relation to me. Each of my words was like a resounding slap, fiercely striking his face. He completely froze, his eyes filled with disbelief. He probably never imagined that the Evelyn who once obeyed him unquestioningly would utter such ruthless words. At that moment, a white SUV slowly stopped by the roadside. The window lowered, revealing Julian's gentle face. Evelyn, get in, didn't we agree to go to the art gallery together? He noticed the tugging between Adrian and me, his gaze lingering on Adrian for a second, then gentlemanly opening the passenger door and inviting me. Okay. I forcefully shook off Adrian's hand. This time, he could not hold on again. I boarded Julian's car, fastened the seatbelt, and did not glance at Adrian throughout. The car started and smoothly drove away. From the rearview mirror, I saw Adrian still standing in place, like a weathered stone sculpture. The jealous fire and despair in his eyes were nearly erupting, his entire body teetered. He clutched his head, painfully bending over, ultimately collapsing embarrassingly to the ground. My heart held no trace of satisfaction, only a dead silence of calm. That person, that scene, resembled a black and white film from the last century, blurred and unrelated to me. The atmosphere in the car was somewhat silent. Julian turned on the music, and soft piano melodies flowed. In a bad mood? He asked softly. No. I shook my head, looking at the rapidly receding streetscape outside the window, just disposed of a piece of trash. Julian did not pursue further, merely smiling. A few days later, I received an email from the Star Cup organizing committee. My work rebirth had successfully advanced to the semifinals. This news was like a beam of light, illuminating my somewhat dim days. I shared this good news with Julian immediately. He was genuinely happy for me and reserved a spot at an elegant restaurant to celebrate. We discussed design, art, and the future, conversing delightfully. He looked into my eyes and said seriously, Evelyn, you were born to be under the spotlight, not in the kitchen. At that moment, I truly felt an urge to cry. It turned out that being understood and appreciated was such a beautiful sensation. I raised my glass, toasting him and myself. To rebirth. The good mood did not last long. Adrian's mother, having somehow obtained my address, arrived aggressively at my door. Dressed in expensive fur, her wrinkled face epitomized acerbity, starkly mismatched with my shabby rental room. Evelyn. You vixen. Jinx. She began cursing as soon as she entered, spittle flying. You cursed my son to a terminal illness, and now you shamelessly hook up with another man. Is your heart black? Her voice was extremely loud, quickly attracting onlookers from neighboring residents. People craned their necks, pointing and whispering. That's her? I heard she found a new partner right after divorce. TSK, she looks quite innocent, didn't expect her to be this type. Those gazes and words pierced me like needles. In the past, I might have flushed and endured silently. But now, I would not. I did not argue with her, merely calmly taking out my phone from my pocket and activating the recording function. The red recording indicator flashed on the screen. I aimed the lens at her face, distorted with anger, and spoke clearly and steadily. Madam, first, your son Adrian and I formally completed divorce procedures last week. Legally, we have no relation. Second, your current intrusion into my private residence, engaging in overt insults and slander, has severely violated my legal rights. Third, please leave immediately, otherwise, I will use this video as evidence to report to the police. My composure and logical clarity halted Margaret's clamor abruptly. She probably did not expect that the daughter-in-law who once cowered before her would become so assertive. She looked at my phone's lens, blustering outwardly but timid inwardly. You dare. You can try. I stepped forward, my gaze pressuring her. Intimidated by my presence, she muttered curses while retreating 2 steps, ultimately turning away guiltily and slinking off. The neighbors, seeing no spectacle, dispersed one by one. The world finally quieted. I closed the door, leaning against it, my body trembling slightly. Not from fear, but anger, for my past cowardly self, and for the Liu family's bone-deep selfishness and shamelessness. This incident made me realize I must leave here as soon as possible. I needed a safer and more professional place to house my dreams. I shared this idea with Julian. After listening, he immediately expressed support and recommended a creative industrial park. The rent there offers discounts for startups, and it gathers many designers and artists, with a great creative atmosphere. His assistance was always timely and appropriate. On the other side, in the hospital, Adrian's condition worsened again. Lying on the bed, the physical pain and inner regret tormented him beyond recognition. Yet he still did not give up. When he learned that his mother's uproar at my place not only failed to make me yield but made me more resolute, a pathological obsession sprouted in his heart. He could not accept failure. What he could not obtain, he would destroy. He mobilized his remaining connections and money to suppress the competition I entered. Naively, he believed that by cutting off all my paths, I would have no choice but to return to him desperately, seeking his protection. A week later, I received a call from the organizing committee. The voice on the other end was formulaic and cold. Miss Evelyn, we regret to inform you that your semi-final qualification has been suspended. Because we received a real name report that your entry rebirth is suspected of plagiarism. The word plagiarism was like a basin of ice water poured from head to toe. My first reaction was absurdity. Every line and detail of rebirth stemmed from my 3 years of hellish marriage and struggling survival journey. It flowed with my blood, engraved with my soul. How could it be plagiarism? After a brief shock, I quickly calmed down. Panic solved nothing. I immediately thought of the mastermind. Besides Adrian, no one else would use such despicable means against me. Did he think this would make me submit? He underestimated me. Julian also quickly uncovered the truth through his connections, confirming my suspicion. He called, his tone carrying anger. Evelyn, don't worry, I'll handle this. I won't let Adrian bully you like this. No need. I declined his kind offer. Julian, thank you. But this is the war between him and me. I must win it fairly with my own strength. This was my battle for dignity. I could not rely on others. After hanging up, I immediately took action. I compiled all my design drafts, sketches, inspiration notes from university onward, and the complete process records of rebirth from conception to completion. Each sheet had clear timestamps, the most compelling evidence. Mere passive clarification was insufficient. I needed to take the initiative. I did not contact the competition committee but directly found the contact for the event's largest sponsor. It was an internationally renowned jewelry group, Grace. I sent an email to the director of Grace Group's public relations department. In the email, I did not lament or defend but merely stated the facts and attached partial evidence from my creation process. I requested an opportunity from them, a public hearing where I could confront the accuser face to face, letting the works and evidence speak. I knew it was risky, but I had no other choice. I wanted everyone to see what the truth truly was. While I was rushing around to clear my name, another uninvited guest approached Adrian. Lydia had squandered the breakup fee she received from Adrian, living in financial straits. Upon learning from others that Adrian's company had not gone bankrupt and he was merely ill, she immediately schemed again. Dressed pitifully, she appeared in Adrian's ward carrying a basket of fruit. "Adrian, I'm sorry, I heard you were ill, and I'm so worried about you." She squeezed out a few tears and began her signature performance. "That day at the hospital, I didn't mean to run, I was just too scared, afraid of losing you." She attempted to hold Adrian's hand, but he flung it away. Adrian leaned on the bed, looking at her coldly. Having faced death's threat and Evelyn's resoluteness, he now found the woman's performance utterly disgusting and ironic. Was this the true love for which he abandoned his wife? An opportunist who fled fastest when he was in distress, only to cling again upon discovering his remaining value. "Get out." He squeezed out a word from his throat, his eyes unmasking disgust. "Security! Throw this woman out. Do not allow her to step in here again." Lydia's expression froze instantly. She did not expect Adrian to treat her this way. She was dragged out of the ward embarrassingly by two tall security guards. Adrian watched her being driven away, yet felt no pleasure of revenge. He only felt fatigue and endless emptiness. He swept everything off the bedside table in hysteria. He had lost, utterly defeated. On the third day after sending my email, I received a call from Grace Group. The CEO's chief assistant, a woman with a competent voice, informed me that the group's executives, after discussion, had approved my request. They decided to organize a small internal hearing, inviting representatives from the competition committee, several authoritative industry experts as judges, and the anonymous reporter. The location was at Grace Group's headquarters building. Upon hearing this news, my tightly clenched fist finally relaxed somewhat. I had secured a battlefield to defend myself. On the day of the hearing, dressed in a simple white suit, I entered the bright conference room alone. On one side of the long table sat several judges and representatives with serious expressions. On the other side was a young designer I had never seen, the so-called reporter, now with evasive eyes and fidgeting uneasily. I knew he was merely Adrian's puppet pushed to the forefront. The hearing commenced. The puppet presented his so-called evidence, an old work with slight compositional similarities to my rebirth. He asserted confidently that my work plagiarized his creativity. When it was my turn to speak, I did not rush to refute. I displayed all my materials via projector, from a blurry doodle 3 years ago, to the evolution of concepts, trials with different materials, to the final polishing of details. I clearly elucidated the design philosophy of rebirth, where each posture and feather of the phoenix corresponded to a genuine phase of my mindset. My work contains a story, a soul, and power. This was precisely what Grace had been seeking. On behalf of the group, I formally extend a collaboration invitation. We hope to acquire the copyright of Rebirth and make it our flagship product for the next season. The judges present were experts, able to easily distinguish vibrant originality from clumsy imitation. In the face of my complete creation chain and rigorously logical exposition, the puppet's lies were riddled with holes. Under a senior judge's sharp questioning, his psychological defenses collapsed quickly, admitting he was paid and instructed to falsely accuse me. Although he did not name Adrian, everyone present understood implicitly. The truth was revealed. Adrian's conspiracy not only failed to trample me into the mud but positioned me before everyone in a more dramatic and resolute manner. The conference room fell silent. Suddenly, the woman in the main seat applauded. She appeared in her 40s, with elegant demeanor and sharp eyes. She was Grace Group's CEO, Anna. A very splendid presentation, Miss Evelyn. She stood up, walked to me, and extended her hand. Your work has a story, soul, and power. This is exactly what Grace has been seeking. On behalf of the group, I formally invite you to collaborate. We hope to buy out the copyright of Rebirth and make it our next season's flagship product. Happiness came too suddenly, I almost could not believe my ears. Not only had I cleared my suspicion, but I also received an olive branch from an industry giant. I became famous overnight. The news quickly reached Adrian's ears. In the ward, listening to his assistant's report, he trembled with anger, fiercely sweeping all nearby instruments to the ground. Shrill alarms rang in the ward. He failed to catch his breath, coughing violently, his condition deteriorating again. He lay on the bed, despairingly staring at the ceiling. He finally realized that all his suppressions and calculations had become stepping stones on Evelyn's path to success. He had personally pushed her higher and farther. Meanwhile, outside the hearing venue, Julian had been waiting quietly. When he saw me emerge with a confident smile, the appreciation and admiration in his eyes could no longer be concealed. Using the first copyright fee paid by Grace Group, I rented a bright studio in the creative park recommended by Julian. I named it Rebirth Design. Everything fell into place. I received the first formal order from Grace Group and began optimizing designs for the mass production of the Rebirth series. The studio needed staff, so I began recruiting. Julian assisted again, recommending several talents with excellent reputation and abilities in the industry, helping me quickly build a core team. On the studio's opening day, I held no grand ceremony, merely having a simple meal with the team members. But trouble still came knocking. Adrian's mother appeared again. This time, she lacked her previous arrogance, her face bearing weariness and supplication. She was stopped by my assistant at the door, tearfully pleading through the glass door. "Evelyn, I beg you, please go see Adrian. He's nearly gone, the doctor says his will to live is too weak, refusing to cooperate with treatment. His only wish now is to see you one more time." Looking at her face full of calculation, my heart remained unmoved. If only she had known today, why the actions of yesterday? Using family ties and morality to bind me? This ploy no longer worked on me. I did not go out, merely shaking my head at my assistant. The assistant understood, politely but firmly asking her to leave. "Sorry, Evelyn is very busy." A few days later, Adrian's father, the man always lofty in my impression, personally came to my studio. He had aged considerably since our last meeting, with graying temples. Without superfluous words, he directly took out a check from his briefcase and pushed it toward me. The amount was sufficient to buy the largest building in this creative park. "Evelyn, I know our Liu family has wronged you in the past." His posture was very low. "Adrian needs a high-risk surgery, but he has completely given up on himself. The doctor says the patient's will to live is crucial. I beg you to visit him at the hospital, even if it's an act, as long as it motivates him to cooperate with the surgery. This check is yours, and afterward, the Liu family will never disturb you again." Looking at that check, I suddenly laughed. Genuinely, finding it absurd and pathetic. In their eyes, everything could be measured and purchased with money, emotions, dignity, even a life-saving act. I pushed the check back, gazing directly at him. "Richard, you have perhaps misunderstood something. Back then, I married Adrian with nothing, and what I wanted was never your Liu family's money. What I wanted was his respect and care as a husband, and your minimal kindness as family. But you did not provide it. Now, what I want, I can earn myself. And what you wish to buy, I happen not to sell." I stood up, looking down at him. "Some things money can never buy. For example, trampled dignity, for example, a heart that has completely died. Take the check back, goodbye, no need to see you out." Richard's face alternated between pale and flushed. He probably had never suffered such humiliation in his life. He picked up the check, his hand trembling slightly, and ultimately turned to leave without a word. Watching his retreating figure, my heart was crystal clear. Once I looked up to them, now I looked down upon them. This feeling was truly good. my studio gradually gained fame. Upon launch, the Rebirth series caused a huge market response. My unique design style, filled with feminine power and emotional resonance, quickly captured a large number of loyal clients. As an emerging designer, I began frequently receiving invitations to various industry receptions. At one star-studded banquet, I wore a gown of my own design, radiating brilliance. Then, I encountered Lydia again. She was arm in arm with a pot-bellied, greasy tycoon, her jewelry gaudy and cumbersome, making her resemble a Christmas tree. Seeing my current boundless success, the jealousy in her eyes nearly materialized. "Oh, isn't this the Liu family's former daughter-in-law? How different after divorce," climbing onto Grace's high branch. She spoke sarcastically, attempting to sting me with words. I had no interest in entertaining such a clown and prepared to bypass her. Julian, who had been by my side, spoke first. He glanced faintly at Lydia, his tone mild yet carrying an undeniable authority. "Miss Evelyn is now the founder of Rebirth Design and an important partner of our company. Please mind your words." He glanced at the tycoon beside her and chuckled lightly. "Victor, you always have impeccable taste, what's this today?" Upon seeing Julian, Victor's face changed immediately, smiling obsequiously. "Julian, you're here too. Misunderstanding, all a misunderstanding." He glared harshly at Lydia and hurriedly pulled her away. I looked at Julian and could not help but smile. "Thank you. No need." Julian looked at me, the lights fragmenting into a galaxy in his eyes. "I just dislike seeing someone bully the person I admire." Midway through the reception, he invited me to the terrace. The evening breeze brushed gently, the city's night view unfolding below. He suddenly became somewhat nervous, took a deep breath, and looked at me seriously. "Evelyn, I like you. From the first time I saw you in the library, I was attracted by your passion and focus on design. Later, watching you step by step emerge from the shadows and become increasingly radiant, my liking deepened. I don't know if you're ready, but I don't want to wait anymore. Are you willing to consider me?" His confession was sincere and clumsy, yet it made my heart skip a beat. I admitted that I had long developed special feelings for this man who silently supported and appreciated me. But I was afraid. Afraid of falling into another relationship, afraid of being hurt again. I lowered my gaze and said softly, "Julian, thank you. I need some time." He did not pressure me, merely smiling gently. "It's fine, I'll wait however long." On the other side, Adrian learned from his father that I had refused the huge check. His last hope was completely shattered. He sat desolately in the ward for an entire day, neither eating nor drinking, silent. In extreme despair, he paradoxically calmed down. He began reflecting on his absurd and laughable life. He recalled many overlooked past events. He finally signed the high-risk surgery consent form. He decided to live on. Not to reclaim anything, but humbly, to catch a few more glimpses of that woman. The night before the surgery, he mustered all his strength to send me a final text message. He did not beg for forgiveness again nor make any demands. He merely recounted a short story. He said he first felt moved by me at a university mixer. I was wearing a white dress, quietly sitting in the corner drawing, sunlight sprinkling on my profile, beautifully unreal. He said he married me with genuine intent initially. But in the day-to-day monotony and external temptations, he gradually forgot that original heart. The message ended with his endless repentance and a belated sorry. "Evelyn, if I can still live, I won't disturb you again. Your happiness is my best ending." I saw that message. Under the orange-yellow light of the rental room, I looked at each word on the screen, unmoving for a long time. Those so-called affections he never voiced, and his 3-year late repentance, now seemed pale and powerless to me. My heart had already died, no amount of tears could revive it. Silently, my fingertips slid across the screen and pressed delete. No reply, nor was one needed. Between us, it ended here. Later, I heard sporadic news about Adrian from Professor William. His surgery was perilous, a narrow escape from death, but ultimately successful. His life was saved, but his body suffered great damage, unable to return to its former state. During his long recovery, the Lu Group board completed a power transition. He was completely sidelined, becoming a nominal former president. His era had ended. After discharge, he sold the suburban villa, cleared the company's debts, and moved into an unknown small apartment. He finally personally experienced the bankruptcy he had used to deceive me. Meanwhile, my life was flourishing. The studio's business grew better, my design style received fervent market pursuit, and even foreign brands began extending olive branches to me. I decided to open my first physical store. From site selection, design to decoration, Julian participated throughout, providing countless professional and thoughtful suggestions. He did not mention the confession again, yet his actions gradually melted my frozen heart. He would deliver warm late-night snacks when I drew until midnight. When I hit bottlenecks, he would take me to exhibitions or concerts to seek inspiration. He remembered all my preferences and respected all my decisions. In his company, the smiles on my face increased and became more genuine. On a sunny afternoon, we were debating endlessly over the new store's window design. He looked at me, suddenly falling silent, merely smiling. I felt somewhat uneasy under his gaze. "What are you smiling at?" He approached, gently taking my hand and placing it on his chest. "Evelyn, I don't want to wait anymore." This time I did not retreat. I stood on tiptoe and planted a light kiss on his lips. Okay. We were officially together. Without grandiosity, only a steady flow of understanding and warmth. He made me understand that healthy love is two people standing side by side, not one humbly following behind another. Soon after, I heard news of Lydia. The tycoon she attached to was merely a shell scammer. She was defrauded of all her savings and left with massive debts, her fate utterly miserable. When I heard this news, I was selecting decorative paintings for the new store with Julian. My heart had no ripple. Karma never fails. Adrian soon learned of my relationship with Julian. His mother told him crying over the phone. He held the phone, listening to her curses and sobs, silent for a long time. A familiar dull pain arose in his chest, like being repeatedly cut by a rusty knife. But he no longer had the strength or qualification to stop anything. He began attempting an ordinary person's life. With his still decent resume, he found a 9-to-5 clerical job at a small company. Daily commuting by subway, eating boxed lunches, dealing with picky superiors and complex interpersonal relations. For the first time, he experienced how arduous earning money was. He also finally began to understand the great sacrifice Evelyn made back then by abandoning her career to manage everything at home for him. One weekend afternoon, while delivering documents to a client, on the busiest commercial street in the city center, he spotted Evelyn across the bustling street. She stood with Julian, pointing at something in a newly opened shop. Her face brimmed with a brilliant smile, a genuine, unshadowed happiness he had never seen on her face. Julian looked at her tenderly, smoothing her wind-disheveled hair. The two together were so well-matched, so dazzling. Adrian instinctively hid behind a billboard, like a thief avoiding light. He watched from afar as they smiled at each other, held hands, and left, until their figures disappeared around the corner. Only then did he slowly emerge, his eyes already moist. He finally understood completely, he had lost her. Forever. Evelyn's first rebirth physical store grandly opened on a sunny winter day. The opening ceremony was attended by distinguished guests. Professor William came, Julian's friends came, along with many admiring clients and media. Dressed in a sharp white suit, I took the stage as founder and chief designer to speak. I did not utter many pleasantries, merely sincerely thanking all who helped me during my lowest point. Rebirth to me is not merely a brand, but an attitude. It tells me that no matter what darkness and hurt we experience, we have the right and ability to choose to start anew and live for ourselves. I hope my designs bring the same power and courage to everyone who wears them. My speech earned applause from the entire audience. Below the stage, Julian looked at me, his eyes full of pride and affection. I knew the best chapter of my life had just begun.